Welcome children. Today we are going to start a new chapter of history for standard 7th. This is chapter 4, the Mughal Empire. Now children, this is a map of the Indian subcontinent. Now which are the countries included in the Indian subcontinent? They are Pakistan, you can see here, Pakistan, then Nepal, of course India, then Bhutan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. These countries, which are now separate countries, they were once one whole mass which was called as the Indian subcontinent. Afghanistan is not included in it. Okay, now ruling such a large territory like the Indian subcontinent was not an easy task for any ruler. Because why was it not easy? Because of the diversity of the people belonging to various religions, their cultures were different, their food habits were different, dressing habits were different. So ruling all this diversity for any ruler to occupy and conquer was very difficult. Okay, until the 16th century no ruler was able to rule such a huge territory for a long time. In fact, it was the Mughals, later on the Mughals, who really created and controlled such a large empire. Okay, they started from Delhi and Agra in the half of the 16th century, and by 17th century they were controlling the entire Indian subcontinent. Children, in this chapter we are going to learn about the Mughal dynasty between the time period 1526 to 1707, and we are going to learn starting from Babur, who was the founder of the Mughal dynasty, till the last most powerful Mughal ruler Aurangzeb. And after his death in 1707, the later Mughals were very weak and the Mughal dynasty started to decline. So we'll see, starting from Babur, we'll learn about the story of Babur and then his sons and grandsons, and how they conquered the entire subcontinent. Okay, they had made such wonderful rules for administration, for governance, that even after the ruler's rule ended or he died, their system of governance continued, and that is why they were able to rule such a large territory like the Indian subcontinent despite the diversities that it had. So children, let us recap the introduction that I just told you. So as I told you, ruling a large territory like the Indian subcontinent was not easy. Why was it not easy? Because of the diversity that India had, diversity of the people and the culture and the tradition. Okay, and no ruler till the starting of the 16th century was able to rule the subcontinent for a long time. In fact, it was only the Mughals who created and controlled such a large empire, the entire subcontinent, very effectively. Now, they started from half of the 16th century, started from Delhi and Agra, and then by the end of the 17th century, they had control over the entire subcontinent. How did they manage to do it? Yes, because they had proper administrative rules and ideas for governance, which they imposed on the people, and even after the ruler died or his rule ended, this kind of system kept on following, and that is why they were able to rule for 300 years. And they built magnificent buildings. One of them is the Red Fort, which was the resident of a Mughal emperor. He used to live there, and today the Prime Minister of India addresses the nation on every Independence Day from the Red Fort in New Delhi. Now children, the next question arises as to who were the Mughals. Now the Mughals, from their mother's side, they were descendants or related to Genghis Khan. Now, as I was doing the Delhi Sultanate chapter, I had told you who Genghis Khan was. He was a ruler of the Mongol tribe from China and Central Asia, and he had heard about the wealth of India and he wanted to loot and plunder. So when he came to India from Afghanistan side, from the northwest side, he entered Delhi and he killed a number of people, looted, plundered and went away. Yes, so people remember him as a barbaric ruler. Okay, from this father's side, they were related or descendants of Timur. Okay, now who was Timur? He was the ruler of Iran, Iraq, and modern day Turkey. And if you remember, he came to India and he captured Delhi in 1308 and ruled. So he was a great ruler. Now, the Mughals don't want themselves to be called Mongols or Mughals because they don't want to be associated with Genghis Khan, who was known for massacring hundreds and thousands of people. In fact, they want to be remembered as a descendant or related to Timur because he was a great ruler and he had occupied Delhi in 1308. Children, here is a miniature painting which is given in your textbook also. Now this painting shows that they were very proud that they were related or descendants of Timur. You can see Timur sitting in the center and all the other Mughal emperors around him. So they actually celebrated and they were very proud that they were related to Timur because he was a great ruler and had captured Delhi in 1308 and he was a ruler of Iran, Iraq and modern day Turkey. They don't want to be remembered as they were descendants of Genghis Khan. As I told you, Genghis Khan was only remembered as a barbaric ruler who massacred hundreds and thousands of people when he came to Delhi and looted it. Okay. Okay, children, let us now look into the entire interesting story of the establishment of the Mughal Empire. Yes, it started with Babur, who is the founder of the Mughal Empire. We look into his small story, how he managed to come into India and then set up the Mughal dynasty. Now, Babur was born in a small country called Fargana. Present day, it is called as Uzbekistan. Now, Babur's father died early. He was only 12 years old when he succeeded to the throne, and since he had no experience, he was overthrown by a Mongol group called Uzbeks, and that is why this country is now called as Uzbekistan, and he was forced to leave his country. For many years he wandered around, but with the help of few trusted friends and soldiers, he managed to raise an army. Now, children, as I told you, Babur was forced to leave his home country, Fargana, and he raised an army. Then he crossed over the Hindu Kush mountains, and with that small army, he was able to conquer Kabul, from where he started ruling. Now, during that same time in India, it was ruled by the Delhi Sultanate ruler called Abraham Lodi. Delhi was ruled by Abraham Lodi. Now, who was Abraham Lodi? He was one of the last of the Delhi Sultanate rulers, and he was known to be very cruel and high-headed ruler, and was known for his atrocities, that is to kill and is to not listen to anybody. And he did not maintain any good relations with his nobles, and many a times he got them imprisoned or poisoned them or killed them. Now, one such noble of his, who was also his cousin, called Daulat Khan Lodi, who was a governor of Punjab, was not happy with his dealings. In fact, he wanted to take revenge. Now, how will he take revenge? It was very difficult to defeat Abraham Lodi because he had a huge, large standing army, lots of elephants and soldiers. So it was very difficult to defeat him. Now, the only way Daulat Khan Lodi thought to defeat Abraham Lodi, he had heard about Babur, who was a great commander and general, and he was known to fight wars. So he thought that if he calls Babur to Delhi and invade Delhi and defeat Abraham Lodi, and he would make, after he defeats Abraham Lodi, he will be made the ruler of Delhi, and Babur will go back to his own country, Kabul. Now, Daulat Khan Lodi, who wanted to take revenge from Abraham Lodi and establish himself as the next sultan, he could not defeat Abraham Lodi because of the long-standing army that Abraham Lodi had. So he had heard about Babur, who was very known general and a commander, an excellent army general, was known how to fight wars and win them. So he sends an invitation and inviting Babur to come and invade India and defeat Abraham Lodi. Now Babur accepts the invitation, and since he had heard a lot about India and its wealth, Now his intentions was not only to go to India and loot and plunder, but he now wanted to establish the Mughal Empire in India. He had different intentions, but Daulat Khan Lodi thought that he will just invade India and go back and rule his own country, Kabul. But Babur came with a different intention, okay, and he now accepted the invitation, and both Babur and Abraham Lodi met at the battlefield which was called as the First Battle of Panipat in 1526. Now Abraham Lodi was very confident that he would win the war against Babur, because Babur had a very small standing army. He didn't have much of artillery and weapons, and whereas Abraham Lodi, you can see in this picture, he had a number of soldiers, thousands of soldiers in his army, number of elephants, artillery, weapons. So he was very confident that he will be able to defeat Babur. Now Babur, who was known to be a military genius and a commander, great commander at war, he was there to now surprise Abraham Lodi. He had now brought in a new weapon called the cannon, which used gunpowder. Children, as I told you, Babur was a brilliant military commander, and to fight wars, he used the Tulgoma strategy. Now, what was this strategy? Yes, he divided his army into three parts. So, it was called the left flank, the center flank, and the right flank. Now, in the center flank behind, he would place carts, okay, which would hide these cannons so that the enemies could not see these cannons that were there. They were hidden by these carts which were on wheels. Even the cannons were on wheels. Now this picture clearly shows the difference between Babur's army and Abraham Lodi's army. So you can see Abraham Lodi has more elephants in his army and soldiers, lots of soldiers in his army, whereas he has horses also, and you can see lots of weapons, okay. Whereas Babur has more of horses and a special weapon, that he is going to surprise Abraham Lodi with was these cannons, which will be using gunpowder. And Babur's strategy, as I told you, the right flank and the left flank, they would move in a semicircular manner. You can see they're encircling the enemy's army from the left side and then from the right side, okay. So this is how they would encircle the entire army and attack, okay. So you see, children, once the right flank of the army and the left flank of the army would move in a semicircular way and would encircle the enemy. Okay, once that was done, then the central flank would fire the gunpowder from these cannons, and they were shielded by these carts so that the enemies could not see what was behind that. So, and the enemy, the Abraham's army was taken by surprise. They had never seen such a weapon, and they were only used to either fighting with the sword or with a bow and arrow. Another unique feature of this cannon was that they were on wheels and they could be moved in any direction. You can see these carts were also attached with ropes, and they were on wheels and they could move in any direction they wanted. Okay, so this surprised the enemy, Abraham's army. Children, hearing the sound of gunpowder, the elephants were, they could not bear this gunpowder sound, so they started throwing over their rider, trampling over, and wanted to run away from the battlefield. Okay, and even the soldiers were never had experienced this, and they were losing courage. So you can see how cleverly, with this kind of weapon that Babur used, he completely devastated Abraham Lodi's army. So now, with the first battle of Panipat in 1526, Babur defeated Abraham Lodi, and from here he laid the foundation of the Mughal Empire. Now, after the battle of Panipat, Babur could not rest. In fact, he was faced with a new challenge, and this time the challenge was from Rana Sanga of Mewar. Rana Sanga was a very ambitious Rajput ruler. He also had his eyes on Delhi and Agra and wanted to rule from there. But he dared not fight a battle with Abraham Lodi, because he knew Abraham Lodi had large standing army. It was not possible for him to defeat Abraham Lodi. In fact, he was very happy when Babur defeated Abraham Lodi in the first battle of Panipat, and he thought that Babur would take away all the loot and wealth and go back to Kabul. But this did not happen. When he heard that Babur had different intentions, in fact he wanted to establish the Mughal rule in India, he was very disappointed, and then he decided to fight a battle with Babur, and that led to the Battle of Khanwa. Now, you see, Rana Sanga was very unhappy with the Babur's intentions, and this led to the Battle of Khanwa in 1527. And you know who will win the war, even though Babur had a small army, but he had a special weapon which was a cannon, and Rana Sanga's army could not face that, and soon Rana Sanga was defeated in the Battle of Khanwa in 1527. Now Rana Sanga, being very ambitious, he was not happy with the defeat of the Battle of Khanwa. In fact, he was now planning again to have a battle with Babur. When Babur heard about this, he now raised his army, and then he attacked the friend of Rana Sanga, that is the ruler of Malwa, in 1528. And you know who will win the war? Of course, it is going to be Babur, because of his special weapon that he used, the cannons and gunpowder. So now Malwa came under the control of Babur. Now after defeating the ruler of Malwa, we can see now Babur has occupied a number of territories in India. You can see he occupied Delhi, Agra, Punjab, Malwa, and he was already a ruler of Kabul. So all these territories came under his rule, and with this began the Mughal rule in India. And we can see, but Babur ruled only for 4 years, and then he died, and then the kingdom was handed over to his son Humayun. Children, with this we come to the end of the part 1 of this video, and we'll continue with the story of the Mughals in the second part. Thank you, and do view and subscribe.